let's get moving. So, I'm Dwayne. I work at Pantheon, I'll come back to that. Outside of doing tech stuff, I like crochet and webcomics and karaoke. Karaoke was last night. And if JD has anything to do with that, we'll have karaoke tonight as well at Courtside. Keep checking Twitter. All of my slides for this and everything else I do are over on my website, mcdwayne.com. It's also got all the relevant links for this talk. Because you're going to get the most out of this talk if you play along. You open your machine, spin up a D8 site, or if you have a D8 site already there, just play along, because this is actually really fun to do. Quick plug for Pantheon. Pantheon, we are a web ops platform helping people, of all people touching the website, communicate better, get better results faster, automate all the things, and make Drupal awesome. So that's Pantheon. Just curious to who's in the room. So who here considers himself full-time dev? That's what they do. They dev. All right. Who here considers himself a full-time designer? What they do is design things. Awesome. Who here is a project manager? All right. I think this is actually a good project management talk. I really do. Who here is a content editor and creator? Yes. Probably forgetting a couple of things in there. Who is a sales or businessy end of the thing? Awesome. And is anybody here train or involved in actually helping clients figure stuff out? Good, because you're the person this talk is actually designed for, because we're talking about tours. Well, before we talk about the tour module, I'll tell you about my trip to Thailand. So this is the second largest golden reclining Buddha in the world. It's really big. And that is the tour guide who helped me find this, navigated with me, one-on-one tour. It was pretty amazing. And here we are at a train station market where she bought me a coconut, because young green coconut is the best. Here's another statue. If you throw a coin into the belly button of this Buddha, then your wish will come true, apparently. That's not an exact translation, but this is the tour guide who helped me figure out what this thing was. We're on the Green Lung, which is the island in the middle of the river in Bangkok. So a little hidden rainforest in the middle of the river. Here we are up in Chiang Mai. This is up in the mountains. That's the King's Pagoda, where he worships and reflects and meditates on Buddha. I'm taking this from the Queen's Pagoda, which is where the Queen does all of that. There's the tour guide who took us up into the mountains. This is a little village where we bought coffee that they grew in the backyard. Here's the Summer Palace. And there's my favorite tour guide of probably the whole trip. First, that's his name. And there's a Buddha head growing in the tree roots right there. And it's been there for a few hundred years. Here I am hanging out with elephants. And here's the tour guide who taught me how to drive my own tuk-tuk so we could get up in there. It was fun. And here I am editing the views menu in Drupal. And here's the tour guide that told me exactly what every field did, so I could have the best possible time. As you probably figured out, that last one wasn't in Thailand. I didn't actually do any work in Thailand. I'm very proud of that. But that's really the whole goal here, is if we just throw people into an adventure, I can speak from personal experiences, you might make some bad choices and have a bad time. But if you can guide someone to, hey, here is exactly what you want to know, and here's where you're going to have the best time, it's an overall better experience, I think. Well, why am I really talking about this? Well, over a year ago, a guy who's here, actually, Kelly Albright, said something about this that I keep quoting over and over and over again. DevOps is never about tools, it's about the communication. Paraphrasing it all the way. But also in this talk, he said something like this. Developers, we could explain how to use the features, ask for direct feedback. Why wouldn't we do that? That same talk, which you can see, it was at Drupal Camp Texas Drupal Camp 2018. You can find it online. In that same talk, he also demoed the Tor Module, which I had never heard of before. And it literally changed the way I thought about Drupal 8. And it kind of woke me up to wow, that's there? That's just in core? Yeah, it's been in core since 8.0. It's based on this thing called Joyride 2. So if you're the kind of person who just likes writing jQuery, you're going to have a great time, because you're going to be able to dig into the internals and extend this out pretty easily. It's a pretty straightforward library. I am not the kind of person who likes extending out jQuery libraries, so I really am grateful for the work that all the team did to put this in there. The story of how it got in core, kind of like slipped in, is fascinating, and I think it tells this beautiful story of how open source works. Like, enough people with enough willpower to say, we are going to make the world better, we're doing this. They did it, and you can read that whole blog article from Previous Next that I found in my research for this, because I had a misconception of how it got in core, but reading their version of it is like, wow, that is kind of amazing. And I think it is important to stop from time to time and actually look at the people and like the stories of how this stuff worked together. Like, for those of you who are brand new to Drupal, who here is like less than a year into Drupal? Yeah, this is an experienced crowd. Only 2 hands went up. Well, you know, when I first showed up to Drupal, it was, wow, there's this really complex thing that a lot of important people have worked on, and that's just how things are. And then the more you dig into the contrib and the more you dig into like the comment history, you realize, no, this is just a bunch of people that had a good idea who were trying to work together to do a good thing. And everyone in this room is no different than Chris Tolboom or Nick Seshier. They're just people with Drupal accounts pushing for a good common good. So if you haven't contributed, or if you're not sure, like, I'm not sure I can get involved and push Drupal forward, I'm here to tell you can. There's nothing special about any of these guys other than they wanted to make this tour thing happen. So if you go edit views, if you're in front of a Drupal 8 site right now, just log into your admin screen, go to edit the views under wherever it is, admin/structure/views/content or comments, for instance. It's just what this is. It's little pop-up boxes that tell you what to do next. If a tour exists on a page, it's going to be up in the right-hand corner in the admin bar. It says tour. We click the button and it starts the tour. Pretty simple to use. Unfortunately, the only one that's included out of the box with a core Drupal 8 install, standard install, is the one that you just saw in that animated GIF. And that's the only bad news I have for you all day. The good news is these are really straightforward to write. And as we get to the end here, we got enough time, we're going to write one together. We're going to like live edit and do one of these things. Not from scratch, we're going to extend one that already exists. But if you think, hey, I'm going to walk out of this room and know everything there is to know about writing tours, I can't help you. Like, I can illuminate the fact that this exists and give you the couple paths that I have found on how to be successful at it. But the only way you're going to ever find success with this is sitting down and actually doing it. And this is all you need to know. Just this slide, and we're going to go through this, and we'll be done. I'm kidding. That's a lot of stuff really at once. We're going to go through this 2 different ways. First, how do you do this by hand? I think it's important to understand how to do things by hand because it alleviates the black box problem. Like, you click a button and it does a magical thing, and on the other end you get a thing. That's great until it doesn't work. That's great until someone asks you, like, how did this actually happen? What makes this happen? Or you want to extend it out. Then black boxes become a really serious problem. So let's avoid that entirely by figuring out how to do it by hand first. And then we're going to talk about the tour UI, which is a magic black box that spits something out and does it really, really well. And it really needs more help. So if you're thinking like, I would love to be involved and this is a good idea, we'll talk about that later. So I made a template for all this because templates make things a little easier, and templates aren't black boxes, they're just text files. In this case, it's YAML files. So if you go to my GitHub, you can pull this down and you can literally play along at home while we're doing this. First thing we need to know is, what are we calling this file, this tour file? As you see here, it's tour.tour.template.yaml, because that's what Drupal docs tell me to do, tour.tour.tour.id.yaml. So the ID is something you're making up. It should be unique to that particular tour you're trying to write. It doesn't need to be the most unique thing in the universe, because, again, there's nothing included out of the box that you're going to overwrite. You're writing these for your own users. In fact, if you go look at that repo where you can find this tour template, it was me and Dan Ficker's attempt to write generic tours. And we immediately ran into problems with this, because we were writing documentation into tours that already exists as documentation. We're trying to write to a very general audience. And it dawned on us as we were writing these, the real value here isn't the fact that we could write generic tours for Drupal, like we could, but the real value is when you have a customizable experience, when someone needs something that you're going to have to explain multiple times. You've written your own UI, you've written your own module. That's when this really is really going to come in handy. Anyway, back on this topic, tour template.yaml, we named it something. The first section, I'm going to go through this in like there's 5 sections to this thing. First is, well, what the idea is. It's a machine-readable name. Like, if you go to any module like Devil, it's project/Devil, or tour UI, tour_UI, or chaos tools, C tools. You need a machine-readable name. That's pretty straightforward. A module name, this assumes that you're using a module. There's a lot of things in core though, and if you can't find a module for it, you just sort of jump into the systems file, the systems folder, and it's probably in there. We'll come back to all that. A label, human readable name. I like machine readable because if I can read it and a machine can read it, I don't see the big deal, so I like to keep those the same myself. Up to you. English is the default that we're supposed to be using on this thing. There's nothing that says you have to use English. I just can't find documentation for anything but English. So if you can find it, please let me know, and I'll put it in this talk. Then the section of this big thing is routes. As most of the people in the room probably know, we're not relying on paths anymore in Drupal to like make sure we're in the right place. We rely on these things called routes, which map to paths. Why do we do this? There's a long history of that. We're not going to get into it today. However, if you go to any module folder, in that module folder somewhere will be a module.routing.yaml somewhere. And that has all your routes in it. We'll look that up later. We'll come back to this. You can reuse tours across pages that have very similar layouts. The example I'll show later is add user and edit user. Those are pretty much the same exact layout for an admin screen. They have literally the same unique IDs. So we can reuse the same tour over and over again. The third section you need to write in the YAML is your tips. Tips are the individual components of the tour that people see. So when you saw in that experience earlier, I'll just jump to a live one here. This is tip 1. This is tip 2. And I know you can't read that, it's too small, but we'll come back to that and blow it up later. I'll kill that for now. You need to give it some kind of tip. What I've found best practice is the first one is in the introduction to the tour itself. So it's the module you're in -introduction. That's not a standard. That is not you'll have to do it that way. I thought it was just easier to wrap your head around. The ID is going to be unique. It's different than the tour ID. There's a tour ID, and then we're nested down here under tips. So this is the tip ID, which is a different thing. Again, it needs to be unique within the doc. The plugin is text, and here's what I mentioned earlier. If you like extending jQuery, you can roll up your sleeves and put videos in here or anything else you want, but it doesn't come out of the box. Out of the box, the tour module was implemented with text field. Text field, but it does accept HTML. So you can put links in there, bold, your basic elements. It takes basic HTML. Need a label. That's this is where I was going to blow this up. So, a label is the top part, literally the title bar. Well, the label of the tour, and then the body. The body is what you actually read. This adheres to the standards of YAML. If you go to the repo, there's a little bit written about that there. There's also in the official docs, which you absolutely should read if you're going to do this on your own, about the YAML standards of continuations and writing multiple line paragraphs. And then wait. We need to tell it what order to do this in. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. 0, 1 happens first. 1, 2. Well, you get it. So that's just the wait. Then we're basically just going to repeat ourselves from here on out. Except, here we're explaining the thing we're explaining. So in this case, the second thing is pointing at the content tab, for instance. So it'd be a content tab. text, that never changes because, well, unless you're extending it yourself. Label, body, as expected. And then we get to these, location and attributes. So location, when we had that first tour, so let me start this one over. When we had the first tour, part of the tour, the introduction, it's just a modal that pops out in the middle. If you don't put any location, that's what it thinks you want to do. And you can have nothing but these. If you want to build a tour that is just read these 5 boxes, that's all you do. Or you tell it top, left, right, or bottom. And that is relative to the attribute that you're pointing at. So, I'll get out of the way. With attributes, we're either pointing to data ID, which is the best thing to point it at. Why? What's true about IDs? Unique, yes. If you've done your CSS correctly, your IDs are unique. But guess what? Not everything in Drupal included IDs. Kind of a point of frustration as you're going through all of this. Like, that's not standard. We didn't use didn't use IDs everywhere. Nice thing is it's Drupal. You can just extend it. Throw your own IDs in there in your own CSS. Or, especially if you're writing your own modules, or just you can use class names, but just be careful and test out where you think it's going to point, and test it out on a couple devices. And mobile might work a little different than not mobile. And then every other tip you want to write is literally a clone of that. Just weight it down for what order you want it to appear in. Left, right, top, bottom of that ID. In this case, we are to the right. That is a right. We'll actually look at that in a second, or later today. So, again, myself and Dan Ficker wrote a handful of examples at this GitHub, Dwayne's Tours, for you to base off of. You can use them verbatim if you want to use them as jumping off points. The real advantage to, I think, that this route is, besides erasing the black box, is this is super lightweight. You don't need any other tools other than a text editor. You can do this in Notepad. You can write this YAML. Just make sure your tabs are working correctly in your spaces. Let's go back to that second part, finding routes. Because for me, this was a new experience. When I first wrote my first tour, it was like, I've never dealt with a routing system before, it turns out. I'm a site builder. I work with people on the DevOps end to help them figure out composer issues. I help people with deep things, but I rarely actually develop on Pantheon or develop on Drupal. I site build when I'm actually working with CMS. So there's a couple routes we could use to find the routes. First is manually looking them up, which I'm going to show right now. And then the second method is using the Devil module. How many people here use Devil on all their projects? I love it. The more I use the Devil module, the modern version of it, it's great. So once again, we're going to jump into the module itself and look at module/module.routing.yaml. And it will lay out a path. So the methodology I use is I get into the right place. Again, if you're looking for something that's core, that doesn't have its own module, just look in systems because the route's probably there. We're going to look these up based on the path, because that path, admin module uninstall, routes to one, in this case, very, very similar route. So here's, if I just Control F inside that folder, or inside that file, look up admin modules uninstall confirm, there's the actual route. This works. This works every time, and you already have all of this at your disposal if you have your code base. That's the really nice part about it. You don't even need to be online. You can just write these as you go. Oh, here's the slide I was thinking of. That explains all that. So there's the route. The routing, again, not going to get into why we did it today, but yeah, there's a lot of other information other than the path, and it totally makes sense when you start thinking about it and stepping back. At least it did for me. Yeah, so this works out of the box, but honestly, this is confusing sometimes, especially if you're looking at things for front page. Where exactly is that route? Where in the system would you even find that? And that is where Devil kicks in. And I love this tool. As much as I love manually doing things, and I truly do, sometimes the right tool is just a better choice to use. So Devil/routes, if you got Devil installed, will take you to, the screen, where you can look up any routes. You can look up a path. or by partial path. It's got this really neat filter at the top that really, really snappy tells you, you just write part of the path that you know, find any route you want. I assume this is useful for a lot of things. I find it really useful for this particular use case. That way you can type, let's jump to it real quick, route info. Route info. There we go. Nope. Come on. Devil. I got a little bit of a lag up here. Route info. Here we go. And now I want to find that front page. So in my box, I'm just going to type front. Yeah, that path looks right. Oh, that's what the route name is. I'm not really sure where I would have gone and looked that up inside the docs themselves, or inside the route, the routing YAML. Cleaner. What's that?
Here in blocks, it has a little piece of information that says, oh, it's on the front page, to your front.
Yes. Here in blocks, it does say that. It's a black box approach. So I literally are telling you right now, use Devil when it's handy. Other than that, it's not bad to look things up. Understand how it's doing it. And I mentioned it briefly earlier. If you have a same tour that would work on 2 different screens, use 2 different routes, and it will pop up in both places. And if a ID doesn't exist on one of those pages, it just ignores it. It's just like, all right, I'm not going to do that tip because there's nothing it maps to. Well, let's skip that one. So in this particular instance, add versus create. Go back to my manage and people. I'm going to add a user. When I add a user, I get this nice little tour, little 5 steps, login credentials, status. All right, we don't need to see the whole thing. Versus, go back. I didn't click back, I clicked home. All right. And then we're going to edit me. And I hit that tour again. Why isn't that letting me get to the confirm password? Here we go, current password. This field doesn't exist on when I add a new one, but this time it picks it up. This time it knows that it's there because, well, it didn't exist on the other one. Very simple. Now that we've built our YAML, we got to put it somewhere. And that's the place we put it is, well, if you're storing it long-term storage, throw it in your config folder. The doc's sake, throw it in optional. That's the best practice. I don't know why. I want everyone using these tours. Everyone. So just put them where you want. But then you actually need to tell Drupal to pick them up. So if they're in config, you can just config import. There's officially a lot to this. But really this is one of the handy parts of actually using the UI. Because the UI to add a piece of config. I never remember where it is. Configuration sync. Import a single. Tell it you're putting in a tour. Copy paste your YAML. You're good to go. That's all there is to it. Now to get it back out, you're going to have to flush it out of there, and that's where Drush comes in really, really handy. But that is a lot of work. I'll be honest with you. When you're testing individual ones, that's pretty quick. It's handy to do, knowing that you can. I guess I didn't put it in there. Drush config delete, and then just delete the name. So config lists will list how many configs you got, or what configs look like, and then config delete, and then the name, and you're good to go. But yes, there's a tour UI module, which is pretty handy, and what I think everyone in this room would probably end up using. Maybe not. Maybe you like writing the YAML. I do, for some reason. But the tour UI. And here's the 14 steps. And it seems overwhelming, but it's really not. It's really not. It seems like a lot of steps. But honestly, once you figure it out the first time, it's really just this. Install and enable. You're only going to do that once. Add a new tour. Well, maybe you're going to add a new one, or you're going to extend one that they have some starter tours they'll start you out with. Name the tour, find the route. But this is all pretty much guided. It's just fill in the blanks. It'll actually tell you itself how to use it using a tour, as you would expect. So if I go to the tour UI, that pops up under configuration, tours, under user interface. So here's my tour, and getting started, this page, manage tours. And it shows me how to add a tour, it tells me how I can find my routes. It basically does my entire talk for me, and I should have just stood up here and did this instead. And then tells you a little bit more information at the end. So here's tours that do not come standard that you can use. So content admin, that's the one I'm looking for. Thought I had it open already. All right, we'll just look up content. And here's the admin content slash admin slash content. And here's the tour for it. Pretty straightforward. We're just filling in blanks. And there's no need to upload it because Tour UI just takes care of that for you. It just automatically pops it correctly into config and manages all the cleanup as well. The big problem with UI is it's never had a stable release. So if you are on a project that you can only use stable on, this is problematic. The good news is that this still does create the proper configuration. So if you do this in a dev environment, build exactly what you want, export that config will work on any Drupal site ever. So it's a nice workaround. But they could totally use some help. And if we all pitch in a little bit more, we could get this to stable, and then we can just start using this in all of our projects. Well, who can use these tours? By default, administrators can use tours. Because of the nature of tour, we need to have an admin bar. The good news is you can turn the admin bar on for everyone, including anonymous users. No one does, but you can. It's more important you can turn it on for authenticated users, for your editors, for anybody that's ever going to log into the site. They're going to get that bar. Maybe not by default. They should be by default, but you can turn it on for sure. Toolbar, and depending on what else you've loaded, Tour and Toolbar are right beside each other, so you can just turn them on at the same time. And now you can explain how Drupal works to anybody. But if you want to get rid of it, there it is. Drush config list and Drush config delete. And the tour, specifically one that will show up in the config list. You can get rid of them. And that's pretty much it. We're going to build one here in a second. But I gave this talk at Stanford, and someone immediately got excited and was like, "You mean when I sat down and explained how to use this workflow to an editor, I could have just written that down and explained that to every other editor that ever touched that interface ever again?" Yeah. I was like, I wish I'd have known about this. So that's what I think is the tip of the iceberg. When I originally talked about this with Kelly, it was, if you're writing in your own module, why wouldn't you do this? There's the standard Drupal docs that we all have access to that we assume you're going to read, that you assume you're going to figure it out. But if you write something custom, it is up to you to tell people how to use it. And yeah, you're going to document it. But why wouldn't you just meet them where they are? Don't let them leave the site. Say, all right, just click that button up in the upper right if you get lost. And not just the first time you use it. Not just the second time you use it. But whenever you touch it. You onboard a new person, that's the first thing they should do with that interface, is go through the tour. So, let's use the power of the tour UI. I'm not going to do this by hand. I'm really scared about that, with enough things that could possibly go wrong. But I'm going to rely on the black box of the tour UI to make this happen. We're going to write one together. But I don't want to write one from scratch because that seems scary. We have enough time, though. We totally have enough time. In fact, I'm going to call an audible, say, let's do the scary thing live. So if I go to my, let's see, add content. Here we go. Add content does not have a tour up in the corner. So, what's that?
No.
Yeah, I thought you had a question, guys. So let's go ahead and write one of these. So here's the tour UI. And I'm going to add a tour. And this is going to be the add content tour. And the module name, is going to be system, because I'm pretty sure content doesn't have its own thing. So for routes, we need to find a route. That page is node add. Come on. Firefox loves doing that to me, playing hide and go seek with my routes info. Node add. Ooh, node add versus node add page. Yeah, this one node add. So there's my route. And then this populates here. I want to add a new tip.
If there's a route that is a dynamic, do you fill in the dynamic value? So if I'm
So like node type there.
need help on
Yeah.
an article.
I believe so, but I couldn't cite the document to tell you why I believe that.
Okay.
I have a very similar question. So, like with a group, forming a group, we have a specific form for a specific group type, and we want to walk people through that. And I do the route search, and it just basically says, group add form, but then that's it. But obviously, the path has group type listed in there.
Yeah.
If I do just the standard route name, like in this case, node add, without the additional path for the dynamic, like he was saying, would it show up on every single group add form?
I don't know that. We could find out. Do you have it open?
I just downloaded the tour URL right now, so I'm going to give this a shot.
Oh, we got 15 minutes, so let's find out.
Tor for node add X.
Yeah, it's the same idea. I mean, whether you add page, because
Let's see.
if you have more than it's article and page, so
Yeah. Let's go ahead. I'm gonna call an audible on that because this is a boring tour we're writing, isn't it? Let's edit this thing. So, we'll add for article, content, article, tour, and system.
That's, you'll have to.
Just the path, yeah.
Oh, that's the path. Good call, everybody. Good call. Good call. Come on. Oh. We'll fix it on the backside. Intro. Wait, -100. It's a modal. One at the top. This is an intro test. That's good enough. All right. And we're going to put it on node add. We're going to save. We're going to go back to add content. Pop it in there. It does not appear there. Create a new article.
Isn't there either.
There it is.
Now, to my question, if you were to go and create a page, which is under the node add basic page, does it now show up there as well, since it wasn't specified?
So
And
there
yeah,
it is.
does.
can you change the route to node.add article?
Let's find out. Article. I love this because I am learning at the exact same time y'all are. Like, I have no idea.
This is very cool.
I never actually bothered to test this. So it doesn't show up on there as expected. And here we are on the basic page. And it goes away. And here we are on an article. And I'm guessing it's going to go away because that route doesn't make sense to it.
Yeah.
Right.
There we go. So there we've tested it.
So how do we pass that variable, I guess, into the route?
That I do not know. If you have unique IDs on that page, and you're only pointing to those IDs, it wouldn't show up on any other page. Like the tour button would appear, and the modals would appear, but if you're pointing at an ID and the ID is not present, the tip never appears.
Although it says list of routes, so you just put list of all the content types, and then
I'm sorry, say that again?
It says list of routes, so you would just put list of all the content type routes to all the content types instead.
Yeah, because this is standard, and so I just did a impression, and so if I had a different new content type, come on, structure, content types, content type, not comment type, come on, content, new content type, author, author name. Yeah, we don't need much on this. Cool. All right, and now I go to content and add content, add author page. Go back to my routes.
Yeah, just doesn't exist. You have to have just no .add.
Sorry, well, can't really hear you.
It appears you can just use no .add and you can't
Yep.
do anything else.
That seems to be a limitation until you extend. There's no reason you couldn't extend the routes, but this is going by the existing routes. So that would be the qualification. You'd have to go in and extend a route just for that page. And I do not know how to do that, to be honest with you. Again, site builder. Limit to what's out of the box. All right. Well, with that actually puts me at time for like the speaking part, and then we had this reserved for Q&A, even though we've been doing Q&A and live demo. So does anybody have any questions that don't need a live demo quite yet? Sorry. Go ahead.
So you said in order for that to appear on the site, we will need to give access to the admin bar.
Yeah.
So this is not a tool that I can use for user experience.
Yeah, absolutely you can. But the thing is that the tour itself is trapped in the bar. So if I go back to people, the people tab, I go to permissions, find tour. So access to tours, I have for anonymous users on this particular site. I can turn that off, but that means if I go home.
Someone can customize the toolbar in permissions because I let my interns flush cache or something. But the only other thing we can do is add a page or add a. And so I have the admin bar. It shows them the admin bar and I sign in, but then there's just limited stuff on it. So maybe you could add more to that too.
It should be right there.
Yeah, I'm thinking like a non-authenticated user coming onto the page for the first time, and then the tour just pops up and shows them around the page initially.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the thing is you just have to turn on the admin bar for them. And I think since there's nothing loaded in the admin bar, it's not showing. Because I never built that tour, did I? But I logged out in this browser, so this is going to take a second.
And follow-up question was, how does this look on mobile?
That's an easier question to answer. Let me log in back into my site real quick. All right, so I want to edit myself. That goes my tour. All right, so nope. Not terrible. Why did I do this in Firefox?
I think all those.
Yeah. There we go.
That's the thing that's why I gave them flush cache, the interns, because Kern never just updates the view of the page, you change the page, and it's like, yeah.
So it doesn't look great, it doesn't look terrible.
Yeah, it looks alright.
There is an open patch that needs review right now. I think it needs review. That's where I saw it on Wednesday. To make HTML links pop out, because you can embed HTML links, but right now they just default white, and you have to do some HTML trickery to modify them per tour. So there is an open patch for that. But that's the mobile experience.
Is that actually supporting text formats? Can you embed images as well?
No, I've never found success in embedding images, but links work just fine. Like, there's no reason you shouldn't be able to. Let's go try it real quick. I've never actually had it work. Come on. There we go. So I'm back logged in, and I'm gonna make.
And after that, I found something.
Which
too.
one of these was the tour? Configurations, user interface, tours. Tour edit. Tour. Is this one? Yeah, it's this one. So we will edit the getting started, and we need a picture of, let's just say a cat pic. Copy image, image location. Boom. That's tour, and then image source equals HTML. Okay, and then we go back to tours. Here we go. So then hit the tour. Do a refresh. Make sure it's getting the cleanest. Hey, it worked.
Yay.
I have not had that ever work before, so congratulations. Thank you. I just learned that. I think I just didn't clear the cache last time.
To what we were asking about with the paths on top of the routes.
Yeah.
The specific looks like there's a patch right now that will allow you to add parameters to the
Oh.
routes for paths.
Cool.
So
Yeah. So
Also, to answer his question about using it for anonymous users, I just did on Unami, it works fine.
yeah. I don't know why it wasn't popping up on this one.
Log in as an anonymous user on Unami.
I blew up the other site doing something really, really dumb that I rebuilt the site this morning.
no, I'll send it to work.
Yeah,
That's how it is.
exactly. Yeah, you have to move to one, correct?
There is some issue.
Which is a little ugly.
Yeah. So that's the prettiest thing. Yes, back.
So say you create a tour
Yeah.
and then something changes and you need to revise it,
Yeah.
can you just take your YAML file and just paste it right back in again?
So that is where, I'm going to go back to my slides, that is where you're going to delete, this is the fastest way to do it, is drush config delete the tour, and then just re-add it.
Okay.
If you overwrite it, I ran into issues with that. It was like, this tour already exists, and it wouldn't let me just do it, because the tour name already exists, so delete the tour, re-add it. Or if you're using the tour UI, it just takes care of that for you. You can just edit from the tour UI. Even tours you hand wrote will show up in this list.
Okay.
Like my edit user down here. Let's get rid of that. Yeah, my edit tour, like I wrote this one. And it still shows up on here, and I can still edit it from here because it's just interpreting the YAML. So no special magic. But it's nice to know that it's all just editing the YAML. It's not a confusing black box anymore.
Right.
Thanks.
All right.
Just, I'm sorry, there's a patch that lets you stick the tour thing in the block.
Okay. Yes, this is still being actively worked on, everybody. So those patches need tested, those patches need applied, those patches need to be written yet. And again, if there's nothing stopping anybody from rolling up their sleeves and like making video work in here and slideshows and forget all the I think there's a Google presentation for the Joyride itself that I read about. Like you can just embed presentations. which you can just technically do with HTML anyway with blocks. But anyhow, yeah, the work needs done. If I would say there's one area that definitely needs focus, and I don't know if this makes me a hypocrite or not. I say this a lot, but I have yet to contribute to the Tour UI module itself, other than like testing things out and playing with it. But I don't have any comments in there, so you won't see my name on the fields. But it's something that we can do together and make this a better experience. I sat down with my designer. We have a new designer at Pantheon, and was literally explaining how the back end of Drupal works and all these fields. And we're still a Drupal 7 site, Pantheon.io. And I was like literally writing notes for her, and I was thinking the whole time, I was like, why can't I just write a tour for this? Why won't they just let me write a tour for this? So she was explaining my notes to the next person that got hired. And I witnessed that, and I'm like, this is what the tour module is literally for, is to prevent everyone from having to do this over and over again piecemeal. So hopefully, if you didn't know about this when you walked in the room, you feel empowered. Zero actual code needed, just a little bit of YAML. And in fact, with the Tour UI, you don't even need that. You just need to fill in text boxes and some drop downs. So thank you, everybody.